Hello, everybody. This is Amy Peikoff, and you're watching News Sandwich. And this is where we will try to make news more palatable to you by layering the bad news that we have to face that's always in the newspaper, the thing that you can't evade. You don't want to evade the state of the world, but we're going to try to make it more palatable by layering that bad news in between two layers of good news. As you see in the title, if you're watching me live or if you're watching anywhere on YouTube, the replay. Today, I'm going to focus on Apple, and you can decide whether you agree with me about my characterization of good news, bad news, good news. You'll see if you listen to me over time that my standard for good news is anything that bodes well, that is propitious for the ability of human beings to live a higher quality life and to live that life free according to their own rational judgment. So, some of the things we'll be talking about are technology, like we'll talk about today, technology that improves the quality of human life. Sometimes we'll be talking about politics, things in culture, all over the map. I'm going to have some fun with this, and I hope that you do too. So, let's dive right in and talk a little bit about Apple. Those of you who are Apple fans, like I am, okay, here I got my iPhone, I've got my watch on. You know that watches and phones have gotten an upgrade recently, and that today was the day that you could order your brand new Apple Watch or Apple phone. We're on Series 4 now of the watch. This is actually a Series 1. I have resisted upgrading until now. The phones are now up to what's called XS, and then I guess there's an XR as well. The phones, I hate to say, are not as interesting to me because the phones keep getting bigger and bigger. So I'm going to have some sort of a dilemma going on. I've got a 7. I love my 7. I've resisted upgrading. That's what you see if you go on my Instagram. I'm taking pictures with my iPhone 7 all the time. I'm very happy with it. But obviously, eventually, it's either going to break down or become obsolete, and I'm going to want to upgrade. And I really hope that Apple stops making the phones bigger and bigger and bigger. And in fact, I was thinking of Apple's designer, their very classic designer, Johnny Ive, who was really good friends with Steve Jobs. I was wondering whether he was really on board with the phone. And what's interesting is I found an article exclusive in the Washington Post. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I had to get that in there, right? About Johnny Ive being very enthusiastic, not about the phone, so maybe the silence is some sort of implication, but about the watch. He's very excited about the new Apple Watch. And in effect, what we've got with the new watch is we've got a device that is smaller in volume, so it's going in the opposite direction of the phones, and it's offering more and more features, including a larger display for the volume size. So I actually look forward to geeking out, going to the Apple store and checking it out. You guys might criticize me because I haven't already ordered my new Apple Watch, but try not to be too impulsive about my expenditures. I'm going to go check it out and everything. I'm very excited though. And when he is talking about this product, he is talking about it in terms of increasing the quality of human life and, of course, making the design more elegant, more intuitive, and basically making human life better by the design of the watch as well. So let me give you a few of the quotations from this article. The headline again at the Washington Post: Apple designer Johnny Ive is zealous over the tech giant's most personal device. And he says this is the watch. Quote from Ive: every bone in my body tells me this is very significant, he said. The new watch, quote, will be a more marked tipping point in understanding and adoption of the product. And what we've got again with the new watch is we've got smaller volume, we have a larger display, and we have more features. So, for example, you can measure EKG, electrocardiogram, on this in a way that is FDA approved, for whatever that means. It also will detect if somebody falls down. So if there's some sort of hard fall, by the wearer of the watch. And if there isn't a response from the wearer of the watch within a certain period of time after that fall, it will actually summon emergency services, which is an amazing feature as well. What Ive is describing in this article, though, is that this is really just the beginning of the evolution of this watch. And here's another intriguing quote from Ive. He says, "The clues for the future are when you can have a high degree of confidence that you personally are connected to the net, not your phone, you," said Ive. And that's the other thing. These phones are, the watches are now becoming less dependent on the phones for connection to the internet. Like the iMac, I don't know if you guys remember the iMac, the first really fashionable iMac, in my opinion. I guess the iMacs that were candy colored and stuff, they were cute and everything, but I didn't get into them at that point. My first iMac was one of the floating screen iMacs. And the floating screen, it had a sort of a dome shaped CPU and then the floating screen. That one was featured in Vogue. And they actually had like a full page out, like a fold out spread in Vogue advertising that magazine. And similarly, this watch, when it first came out, was pitched partly as a fashion accessory, and now it's becoming quite useful. Ive says, for example, that now with the watch, it's also, not just beautiful, not just fashionable, but useful. He says he's read, quote, thousands of letters that people have used the watch in an emergency to get help. Quote from Ive, "I'm so zealous about the watch because I see it as making a material difference to people's quality of life and actually their ability to be alive." As I said, smaller in volume, it has a bigger screen, new sensors, faster chips, and also a louder speaker, so it can be more of a standalone device. Ive apparently sees this watch as well as a way for us to be less glued to our phones, which is always a good thing. Again, quote from Ive, he says, "The screen size, although it's bigger, he says the screen size isn't so expansive that you somehow feel that you'll fill every minute browsing whatever you browse, whether it's your social media, etc." And he added, "It addresses that functional imperative of being able to be in touch." So you can be in touch, you can just take a glance and see if whatever it is that's coming your way is something you really need to attend to, but you're not going to sit there and just always get on your phone. And the less that you're checking, the less likely that you're going to have time that you're not aware of just get sucked into that device, because that is the downside of these devices. So I'm excited about that. As I said, for me personally, you guys can tell me what you think about the phone. Let me get over here and check out your comments. But for me, the bigger phones, they're not my thing. The thing really is the watch this time around. That's what I'm excited about. Unshelled Co says, "We had the dome-shaped iMacs in elementary school." That's really cool. Yeah, those were really gorgeous devices. In fact, I still have mine boxed in the garage. I wonder if it still works. It was really awesome. Luca says he loves his iPhone SE and also loves the format, I guess the larger format. To each his own. I'm walking around, I'm walking my dog when I have this, and I like being able to stick it in my back pocket. And eventually the phone gets so big, I can't just stick it in and out of my pocket and, pull it out when I want to take a picture of a flower or something, or change the music that I'm listening to, or podcast, stuff like that. Bert says, "I foresee some nuisance bugs with it calling emergency services by mistake." Yes, that could probably happen, but that's going to happen in the ramp up of any new life-saving, life-enhancing technology. There's been some of that with the Alexa, the Amazon device as well. Metaphors Be With You says, "It's trading one gadget for another, isn't it?" It is trading one gadget for another, but a gadget that's just on your wrist and that you can glance at in half a second and know that you don't have to attend to anything is, in my mind, different than this thing that you have to take out. You have to often unlock it and do all this stuff to see what's going on and whether you need to attend to it. So now Jack, who's over here in the comments at YouTube, is giving me the wonderful entree to my transition. He says, "Apple is overpriced. No Apple phone is superior enough to my LG to justify the price difference. For $100, my phone ain't half bad." Now, I disagree, obviously, because I'm sitting here carrying one of these things. I love the beautiful design, the user-friendly features, etc. One thing that I sometimes have qualms about, Jack, I'll give you this, is the camera. The cameras on some of the Android or Google-based devices are often better for the money than Apple. But I love how user-friendly, sort of idiot proof these things are. I'm sort of decent with technology. I wouldn't be talking to you right now if I wasn't okay with technology, but these are really user friendly, and I really value the ability. For example, I had talked about recently, I set up an Apple what do you call it, time machine, which is both a backup device and a router, a wireless router. You can set that up in minutes. It's just beautiful, the user friendly nature of these products. So they're priced, you say they're overpriced. What I'm telling you is the bad news is that they're going to get worse, and they're going to get worse for no good reason except for that Trump wants to impose tariffs on them. As expensive as they are, he's going to make them even more expensive. It's going to be more expensive for you to splurge and enjoy, avail yourself of the latest and greatest and most awesome technology. I don't know. I was looking to see just before I started exactly what percentage of tariff Trump has planned. You know, the headlines out there just say that Trump is planning more tariffs on another $200 billion worth of Chinese products. What level of tariff? How much more expensive is this thing going to be because of Trump's tariffs? Anywhere between 5 and 25%. Now, we're going to put a big asterisk in there because also in an article that I read today, thanks to Vox, you find out that the iPhone actually won't be affected by the tariffs, supposedly, you know, at least according to the edict of the Trump administration of the day. The Vox article says that the Trump administration has reportedly assured Cook that the iPhone won't be affected by tariffs. But it's the other one. It's the watch and some other products that I'm really excited about are the ones that are going to be affected by the tariffs. So as expensive as this is, as much of an outlay from your budget it might be in order to take advantage of this wonderful new product, you might be paying anywhere between 5 and 25% more. Thank you to Trump. And I say, if government is going to make something cost more for no real good reason, I say it's bad news. Now, some people would say, okay, well, it's bad news, Amy, but it's just bad news, you know, in the short term, because Trump is just using this as a negotiating tool. And his real goal is that he's going to eventually get China to lower all of their tariffs. And so therefore we're going to lower ours again, and everything's going to be beautiful and hunky-dory. And I say, no, even if you say this is just, oh, we have to pay a little bit more in the interim and everything else, there is absolutely no justification for me to have to go into an Apple store and pay anywhere between 5 and 25% more to enjoy the latest design creation by Johnny Ive and put it on my wrist and walk around and have my life improved by that. There is absolutely no good reason. Yeah, Trump may want to fight a trade war, and you may say, oh, well, there are companies here that are hurt because the other governments, you know, the governments in China and other places, they are imposing tariffs on imports into their country. And so we're just, you know, doing this is trying to get them to lower the tariffs. And I say, if this is a trade war, if this is something that is actually necessary to protect rights of people in our country, which it isn't, you don't have a right to a market overseas, right? But if that's really what it is, the people who are benefiting from that market being open are the ones who should be paying for it. As it stands right now, all of us, including now all these Apple product buyers, we're going to be conscripted into this trade war. We never signed up, right? We didn't sign up for any kind of war. And yet we're being asked to pay between 5 and 25% more for the products. Now, will all of that cost be passed on to us and everything else? We don't know. But what we do know already is that Trump tariffs have caused the prices of washing machines in our country to go up 17%. So anybody who's had to buy a washing machine in this era of Trump tariffs has had to pay 17% more. Washing machine buyers are being conscripted involuntarily into a trade war. That's the bad news. Now, the Vox article talks about the fact that it is going to cost more. They're saying, and one of the angles on this, right? Because Trump tweeted out, he says, well, Apple should just make its products in the United States. That's the simple solution. And, we'll give you incentives to do this. You'll get a tax incentive to do this. Start building new plants now. So Vox did a little bit of research and calculations. This was Emily Stewart over there. Said, well, how much more would it cost per phone to build them in the United States? And she says, well, it wouldn't cost all that much more, only $30 to $40 per phone. And she says, well, it's a modest increase for a device with a 64% profit margin. And I'm like, okay, stop right there. The fact that it wouldn't cost that much more, supposedly per phone, that's speculative at best, but Apple should not be forced to pay any more per phone that it manufactures than it voluntarily agrees to. This is an involuntary, it's an imposition by government, it's government force. Again, Apple being conscripted, all of us being conscripted into the trade war. Now, what Stewart goes on to acknowledge, though, is that this $30 to $40 per phone that it would cost to manufacture more in the United States is assuming a lot of other things. So she acknowledges that there is no infrastructure, if we can use that term, for Apple to build these products here. And in fact, it took them decades to build up the infrastructure to manufacture these products in China. The other thing that she acknowledges is that it's not just about the cost of the different parts and things like that, that there is a unique combination of real skill, seeing what they do there as a trade, as a craft, right? That the people who assemble the phones in China actually see what they do more as a craft than people would here in the United States, that there's something unique about the Chinese workers. It's a qualitative difference in the workers that would make a qualitative difference on the final product as well. So, there's two things about it, right? That's, it's the whole buildup of the infrastructure. You have to take it into account that, they'll be able to do that. They'll be able to, reproduce the same sort of infrastructure here than they can over there. And then second of all, it's that they can assemble, to, use the term, assemble the staff who put together these phones in such a thoughtful and careful way. So this is horrible news. And you're saying, okay, well, here in Trump, the last thing that I read when I was, again, looking for the percentage is between 5 and 25%. We don't know exactly on each product. We also don't know whether it's really going to go into effect soon or when. There's some deadline that has passed and he still hasn't officially announced it's going to go into effect. So he's holding this specter of uncertainty all over everybody, this big threat of the $200 billion tariffs on Chinese goods. So what's the good news, right? What's the good news of this? We have this great new technology. We have Trump trying to make it more expensive. The good news, in my view, is besides the fact that we have news outlets like Vox reporting on how bogus some of Trump's claims are, right? They actually go into it and say, okay, could you really make the iPhone in America? And what would that entail? And what would be lost? It's nice that we have people who are going to go through and actually check those claims and see what it is that is actually at stake. As I said, I sort of found it amusing that Vox brought in the idea that the iPhone wasn't going to be affected by tariffs. Some of you may have read that there's, in this era of Trump tariffs, there's a whole crony mechanism that's built up, a whole swamp around companies trying to get exemptions from tariffs, getting special favors from the government to be exempt from certain tariffs that Trump has been imposing on all of us. And here he is, it's like, okay, I'm going to put the tariffs and I'm going to, go out there and tweet about Apple and everything. But the phone, maybe a lot of my voters like the phone. The phone might be the one, So maybe the iPhone. I have enough voters who use the iPhone that I'm going to go ahead and leave the iPhone exempt from the tariffs. Of course, again, that's not the product that I'm the most excited about. I'm most excited about the watch, which will be affected by the tariffs if it goes into effect. But I also just see this, again, this is a bad news in the sense that Trump is conscripting us, and exemptions to the tariffs are being done on a very crony, try to gain votes and be very popular basis. And I just have a big LOL when I read that. It's just unbelievable that he does this. He goes out there and tweets to Apple, and then asterisk, well, the iPhone won't be affected because I don't want to lose too many votes. So what's the good news besides Vox going out there and doing some reporting on this? It is that Apple is standing up for itself. And this is another way in which I have been proud to continue to be an Apple customer. Some people have heard me comment on the fact that Apple has been a great steward of our privacy interests. And in particular, they have fought to keep encryption technology legal so that you can have this device basically turn into a brick in the absence of a password. And the only way the government can get into it is if they come to you with a warrant that is legally effective enough to make you put your password in and give it to them. And that's really how it should be. This should be like your house. It used to be your house, the warrant, government would have to come to the door, knock on the door, present you with a warrant, then they could search your house. Why shouldn't they still have to come to you personally to see all the personal stuff? Even more than what they'd find if they go through your house is probably in this phone. And the Supreme Court has acknowledged as much. So Apple, you keep reading stories every so often. Apple, Facebook, other tech giants have been wonderful in pushing back against the government to keep encryption technology legal and be good stewards of our privacy. So I've always loved them about that. Now they are also standing up against these tariffs. So the article that I have is a really short one. It was over from the New York Times, and it talks about Ford as well. Ford is awesome in this regard because Trump has been saying about Ford, there's one model, I guess, that it's making in China. And Trump is saying, hey, why don't you make it here? And Ford said, no, sorry, we're not going to. Trump, he says, Ford has abruptly killed a plan to sell a Chinese-made small vehicle in the U.S. because of the prospect of higher U.S. tariffs, CNBC. He says, this is just the beginning. The car can now be built in the USA and the Ford will pay no tariffs. And Ford said, nah, sorry, we're not going to build it in the United States. It just doesn't make good business sense. So they have explained the damage that tariffs are, causing. Now, some people say, well, I don't want that model anyway. Feel free to be deprived of it, but I don't want to be deprived of it. And I don't want my watch to be more expensive either. So here's Apple. Here's Apple defending itself. It says, in a filing with the Commerce Department last week, Apple expressed opposition to the tariffs and said that they could slow economic growth in the United States. Quote from Apple, because all tariffs ultimately show up as a tax on U.S. consumers, they will increase the cost of Apple products that our customers have come to rely on in their daily lives, end quote. And that says it all, right? These beautiful Apple products that keep you connected to people that you care about, allow you to bring into your life pretty much anywhere you are, the cultural products of, I don't know, hundreds of years actually, because you can listen to hundreds of years of wonderful music, classical music as well, on these devices. You can watch movies, so these are beautiful things. And, we've got Trump trying to make them more expensive and Apple defending itself and also standing up for us, correctly identifying that what he is imposing on us, these tariffs, are a tax. They are saying, at least if we're going to be conscripted, we are not going to be conscripted without naming exactly what is going on. So kudos to Apple. That is your good news for the day. Someone had said that I should also, in addition to the news sandwich, give you a recipe, or someone else said a thought of the day. For a recipe, I'd have to give you some kind of apple pie recipe. I mean, it would, So go find an apple pie recipe if you want. Bake some apple pie this weekend in honor of Apple. Kudos to Apple. Kudos to Johnny Ive. I look forward to checking out the new watch. But another person suggested, how about a thought for the day of some kind? And with that, I've got a connection to IVE that we can exploit here, because there is an organization that specializes in giving thoughts of the day out there. Of course, they give thoughts out, the thoughts of the day that they will actually put out there for you to consider and use as advice to make your life better. They're in profane terms. The company is called Good Fucking Design Advice. And the way that I found out about them was through Apple, through Johnny Ive, because Johnny Ive had on the wall of his office, according to an article, there was a big feature article about him that I read. On the wall of his office, he had a poster from this company, GFDA. And that poster has a whole bunch of, very platitudinal, very, just kind of cliche advice, some of it. But when you stick the profanity in there, it becomes funny and it makes you think about it in a way that you hadn't thought before, etc. And the poster is kind of, iconic looking and everything too. If you follow me on social media, you will see it. You can go ahead and go check it out. It's GFDA, and there's all kinds of advice in there. Trust your fucking gut, ask for fucking help. I actually have a mini version of the poster on my wall. Use fucking spell check. I mean, there's just all kinds of advice on this thing, and it's pretty funny. So go check it out. Johnny Ive, I guess, found it inspiring and helpful. You might as well. And with that, that is your news sandwich. If you like this, please subscribe to my channel, share, and I will be back with these about once a week. Next Wednesday is probably when I'm going to do it. Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon Pacific. That'll be my normal time. But because I talked about it the other day, I want to get out here with a news sandwich right away. So everybody, I thank you for joining me. Let me look at a couple questions if there's anything. Yeah, Angelco says, wait, that's it. Yeah, these are going to be short. And actually, this is probably longer than what I intended. I'm still a little bit long-winded for me. I'm going to have to get a little more short form on this. Jack says, if the iPhones get to be too expensive for your taste, it's not like there's not plenty of other phones on the market. There's that too. I mean, I could look at other phones. It's the size at this point that's really getting me, because I'm good about not upgrading too often. So I'm not spending a pile of money, but I'm liking this size. So yeah. Angelco's is a lot shorter than the older ones. Yes, I tried this format a couple times, and I was even more long-winded than I was today. I was, like I said, 15 minutes is maybe what I'm aiming for, but you guys are all going to tell me. Leave me some comments. Tell me, too short, too long, whatever. I wanted to give you a little sandwich, a little bit of news, mostly good news. Again, let's focus on Ive and the wonderful innovation and his desire to make people's lives better through elegant design. I mean, it's fabulous. So let's focus on that, and let's focus on the fact that Apple as a company defends itself, and that we still have freedom of the press, so that we have news media that will go out and check Trump and explain what exactly the effects of his tariffs really are, so that we know what this is. So thanks, everyone. I will talk to you next time. But as for now, I'm going to close this news sandwich. Take care.